Quick disclaimer here, I'm not a professional author, I'm not a novelist, I've never published any books, not yet anyway, and so I can't give you an extensive, exhaustive course on how to write a best-selling novel. What I'm doing here is just sketching out various themes and settings that typically inspire me, and since I personally know that I would like YouTube to have more videos that just inspire me to write, I thought I would do that. And so if nothing else, maybe you'll come away from this video at least feeling inspired to write a short story, or maybe you find some of what I'm saying interesting, and that just kickstarts some ideas that maybe you tell someone else, then they write a story, or something like that. Basically, I'm making a disclaimer here that I'm not giving you an actual course on how to write. I'm just analyzing already existing material from classic or otherwise popular books, explaining what I like about certain books, and sharing some of the themes, topics, and imaginative insights that tend to give me ideas and hoping that you can potentially benefit from them. Now that we've dispensed with all that, let's get into today's topic. That topic is, of course, cosmic horror. For those of you that don't know what it is I'm talking about, cosmic horror is basically just another word for a certain genre of horror that falls under the more Lovecraftian category. This basically includes the side of horror that's more obsessed with the abstract and phenomenal, things that are beyond our comprehension and that even our imaginations can only scratch the surface of. This also includes the more dark, romantic, gothic side of horror, but mostly cosmic horror is understood to be just Lovecraftian horror with a slightly broader name. It's honestly kind of hard to describe exactly what cosmic horror even is, but when I think of cosmic horror, I think of things like a setting that involves very ominous and abstract, almost timeless locations, such as the generic shore or sea encompassed in fog, or a dark night sky, or the void of space, a very dark kind of atmosphere, a mysterious tone, a kind of limited cast of human protagonists, preferably ones who speak in a kind of outdated way of speaking, things like that. And part of the reason that those things come to mind when I think about cosmic horror is probably because those are common things in Lovecraft stories. As we already mentioned, he's pretty much the creator of the cosmic horror genre. At least he's the one who everyone knows of as the cosmic horror writer. Some other authors got pretty close to this area of horror before the time of Lovecraft. People like Matthew Gregory Lewis, Charles Maturin, Arthur Machen, and Charles Williams, and of course Edgar Allan Poe, for example, were all Gothic writers who experimented with a lot of dark themes in their stories, and we'll talk a bit about some of those themes, but H.P. Lovecraft is definitely the one who pioneered the realm of cosmic horror. So by analyzing cosmic horror, we basically mean analyzing H.P. Lovecraft stories and the kinds of things that he's inspired. Now, I'd just like to make it clear that Lovecraft is an author very near and dear to my heart, as I myself adore the kind of dark horror genre that he created and more or less subscribe to some of his methods. He's honestly written far too much for me to analyze in one video, so for the purposes of my analysis section, I'm going to focus on just one of his stories, the one that he's the most famous for and what is by far my favorite of his stories, the Call of Cthulhu. By the way, if you haven't read the story, I'm gonna get into some spoilers, so either do the sensible thing and go read the book first, and then come back to the video, or just skip to this slide. The Call is for me a prime example of Lovecraft at his best, because it has all the hallmarks of what makes cosmic horror so powerful. The story, which you'll know if you've read it, follows the investigations of a man looking into the notes and papers of his late uncle, who, as it is revealed, was investigating an extremely curious cult and correlations between this cult, the alien deity that they worship, and the mysterious nightmares and visions experienced by different people around the world. Throughout the story, it is revealed that the nightmares are in fact real visions of an alien city buried under the ocean, which houses a very real cosmic entity, the entity which the cult worships and attempts to set free. Cthulhu. By the end of the story, we find out that Cthulhu actually was briefly released accidentally by a party of sailors who happened to discover the city. The story ends with the narrator speculating two things. 1. That Cthulhu must have been resealed in the city, else he would have trampled the world by now. And 2. Like the sailor who survived the encounter with Cthulhu and his uncle before him, he suspects that he doesn't have very long to live now that he knows the truth. This story is excellent for multiple reasons. First of all, the tone of this story is just beautifully ominous and dark from start to finish. The setting, such as the murky, humid, swampy environment in which Inspector Legrasse encounters the cult, the cold, stormy sea in which Johansson and the other sailors discover Relia. I apologize if I'm pronouncing that wrong. The Cyclopean architecture, slimy, green stone surroundings, and geometrically awesome configuration of Relia. All of these are just expertly defined and toy with the imagination. The word choices of Lovecraft really make the story what it is as well. He uses words like lurk and prehistoric to really convey the desired atmosphere of the arcane and foreign. He puts a great deal of imagination into his design for Cthulhu, combining elements of an octopus, a dragon, and a humanoid physique to create a truly original yet iconic monster. Even the language that he invents is very well thought up and really makes for an alien atmosphere. The name Cthulhu, for instance, can barely be pronounced in conventional linguistics, and the spelling of it really only adds to the mystery of the world that Lovecraft is attempting to convey. The name Relia has a similar connotation. This is just one example of how Lovecraft utilizes his wordsmith capabilities, imaginative creature designs, and personal interests in the archaic dialects, rituals, and architectural choices to immerse the reader into his story. And it is in these ways that he, as I said before, essentially pioneered the genre of cosmic horror as we understand it today. So, now that we've taken a look at the methods of the best cosmic horror writer of all time, or who I believe is the best cosmic horror writer of all time anyway, now comes the moment that you've probably been waiting for since you saw the thumbnail. How does one write their own cosmic horror? Exactly how does one get the inspiration to write new material concerning so abstract a topic? And how does one channel that inspiration into an effective story? For me, what inspires me are some of the word choices of Lovecraft. Dark words, such as lurks, eerie, vague, madness, basically words that, to me anyway, help convey a tone of darkness and mystery. To me, the ability to write cosmic horror lies with the one's mastery of how to combine the ambiance of man's fears with the realization of them. For Lovecraft, this largely involves combining eerie and ominous settings, like a misty, foggy sea, with the actual horror that lies behind the fog. It's almost like being afraid of the dark. Darkness itself is just the absence of light, and yet most of us are fearful of, or at the very least unsettled by, a dark space because we instinctively have a sensation that there may be some unfriendly thing lying in wait for us. This, in essence, is what cosmic horror, or even just horror in general, visualizes for us, or at least tries to. The concept of not only what kinds of things we as human beings are afraid of, but what fear is. But to tie this back to what is inspiring to me personally, settings are a huge part of this. Timeless settings, or mere elements of a setting, like fog, mist, darkness, a dark forest, a dark wintry landscape, a dead forest which is barren due to some unknown plague or horror. These are all things which tend to get my imagination going. Another category of settings to consider also, of course, are human settlements. Arcane towns and ruins like that which Lovecraft adored, such as Cyclopean architecture, Gothic or Romanesque architecture, Georgian-era setting, essentially outdated yet powerful and intriguing surroundings reminiscent of people who are long gone. These are all just pure enjoyment to think about as mere elements, and you honestly can't help incorporating these elements into fragments of a narrative when you try to visualize them. But perhaps the most Lovecraftian that cosmic horror gets is the ability to make truly horrific and innovative designs for monsters. Lovecraft is a master at this. He incorporates elements of the most unlikely creatures, such as an octopus or crustacean, and pairs them with the most unlikely of concepts, such as an interdimensional alien or entity. A humanoid dragon-winged being with the head of an octopus is a frightening concept, which is part of the genius of it, but it is made even more terrifying when you find out that it has extraterrestrial origins. For me, the monsters of cosmic horror are as Lovecraft's monsters generally were, elements of the tentacled, reptilian, bat-like, slimy, globulous, insectoid, and other features such as these. The behemoth, for example, from Stephen King's The Mist, I consider to be a very cosmic horror-esque configuration, because it has elements of a Lovecraftian monster: colossal scale, tentacles, double-jointed insectoid appendages, a pale and otherworldly aesthetic. Stranger Things' Demogorgon also has a cosmic horror kind of aesthetic and origin story similarly. In short, things that inspire me and make me reflect on cosmic horror are vague, common settings, like a darkness, fog, a stormy and dreary day, coupled with more specific settings such as a sea, a forest, a shore, combined with elements of human innovation, arcane, historic, and prehistoric architectural settings such as Gothic, Cyclopean, rustic, medieval, and other earlier outdated city structures, compiled with some kind of colossal, abysmal, or unthinkable horror, made up of seemingly incompatible features from various real-life creatures, but ones that are not usual, possibly ones that scare us without us really knowing why, like spiders. These are all just things that inspire me. This isn't to say that cosmic horror is exclusively made up of these kinds of elements and themes, and I definitely don't want to make it sound like anyone who attempts to write in this genre must pay homage to the Lovecraftian origins of it by copying these exact elements. So, if you want to write some cosmic horror, don't be afraid to invent and create new kinds of horrors, completely unconventional settings, or sheer abstract and mysterious imagery. Don't be afraid to bend the rules and step outside the realm of Lovecraftian cosmic horror and create your own. Who knows? You just might be the one to pioneer a new genre of horror, just like Lovecraft did.